Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So we have the police having extended powers during the coronavirus pandemic, and who's to say that they will actually be lifted? We've got Rishi Sunak saying that we have a significant recession imminently, but first of all, of course, with all the stress going on, with all the difficulty that MPs are facing, with so many challenges, that obviously they're doing such a good job because it's such a difficult thing that they can at least do the small things right, except of course that they don't understand how their voting works. Rishi Sunak in particular here, and I'm surprised the BBC would want to say something against their go-to for the future Conservative Prime Minister. Got to get those diversity hires in, because let's face it, they don't care about policy. What they do care about is skin colour. So with that in mind, this is about chlorinated chicken. So as you probably know already, we do have other food that is chlorinated. It's a washing process essentially, and for chicken, as an exception, that they don't want that. Obviously, they have it in America, and that's fine, but they're taking exception to chicken, and we're not entirely sure why, but Labour aren't a fan, the Conservatives are, essentially, and they're saying that Rishi Sunak didn't really understand the voting process, and therefore made a mistake and was the only one to do so. It could definitely be the case, or it could of course be that somebody decides to have more principles or whatever they believe in. If they don't understand the topic completely, then fair enough. If the Chancellor doesn't understand cleaning food, who's really to be surprised about that? But in that case, I might go with, this seems good, in which case they're just going with what they think is right instead of towing the party line, which is understandable, actually being an individual. And conversely, it could be then the government needs to say, or the Conservatives need to say, so this is the position we hold, and this is exactly why. If you have any objections, please state them now, because there might be other people who have the same objections who aren't going to raise them. So let's try and get this explained completely, because you might have an objection that we haven't thought of, and therefore you bring it up, and hey, you might persuade the rest of us that we're wrong. We're open to discussion, and we need, more speech is better speech. So please let us know now, and we'll sort it out. And that way, you can have everybody in agreement, because of course they hold the same core ideology anyway, given that they have chosen to be in the same party. And you can fine-tune it later on, because if they're all coming with the same philosophy, then chances are they'll all be able to reach the same conclusion if they all have the same information. There might be a few exceptions, but they will be extremely minor. So what they're mentioning here, and I do appreciate this from the leading rebel, Tory MP Simon Hoare, warned MPs that without changes to the bill, food imports to this country would be cheap for no other reason bar the fact that they were raised to lower standards. I would have thought it's raised with a Z, but okay. And yes, that is actually completely correct, that what he would say is lower standards. Whether or not you agree with that is beside the point. But yeah, if there isn't a market for it, then it won't exist, and it has to be above a certain point in order to be acceptable. For example, pure water and the like, that you don't want toxins in there. For example, lead poisoning is the primary one, that it needs to be sufficiently pure, but not necessarily completely pure. And of course, if it is completely pure, then it isn't good water to have. You're going to be diluted. You actually do need minerals and deposits in there and impurities in order for it to do the job that water is supposed to do. Pure water will just dilute you and will kill you. Have a gallon of pure water in one go, you will die from it. A gallon in one go, you're dead. It's too dilute. So with that in mind, with MPs not quite understanding how the voting works, or not quite being on the same page, maybe being a bit stressed out, you would have thought, okay, hopefully they won't make any decisions that will affect us imminently, but what powers do the police have? So it's slightly different over the UK, but we'll be focusing on England predominantly, because that's the one that matters. Woo. You can't alienate an audience if you've got a tiny one. So they say police have wide-ranging powers to help fight coronavirus. Really? Or is it just to enforce the state mandate? By enforcing the lockdown, 3 key tools they have been given are detaining someone to be tested if they are believed to be infectious. Are they wearing PPE themselves? Well, as this photo aptly shows, no, of course they're not. Being able to close a wide range of non-essential businesses. What are they? Restricting someone's right to move around or be part of a gathering. Try to read that all as one so it doesn't sound as ominous. If you're with 2 or more other people, so there's 3 or more of you in total, then they can ask you to disperse. They cannot tell you to socially distance, seeing as that isn't actually the law. They also can't tell you to wear masks or PPE, because again, that isn't the law. But if you're in a gathering, then they can tell you to they can break up the crowd, which is essentially social distancing. So it's the same, just by another name. What are the fines for this? Well, £100 for a first offence. Yes. you got a licence for that friend, mate. That'll be £100. Reduced to £50 if paid promptly, normally 14 days, through to a maximum of £3,200. Oh, they are lower in the rest of the UK. But in England, because that's the one that matters, that power would lead to court, possible conviction, and therefore a criminal record and even greater fines. Yes, so, got a criminal record. What did you do? I went for a walk. Oh, in a minefield? In an army base? No, just Brecon Beacons. Because we're into Wales now and you're not allowed to do that, as they mention. For example, people from Bristol travelling 70 miles, not allowed. So a reasonable excuse to leave home. So what are you actually allowed to do? And this does bring into a fun question in terms of violating the non-aggression principle when it comes to things like taxes, that you have to pay them and you can't opt out. So let's say, oh, well, then I don't want to use anything that taxes pay for because I don't want to pay taxes at all. I'd rather just opt out. But of course, you can't, because if you have a home, then there is council tax. You can't opt out of that. If you're using anything at all, even just areas of outstanding natural beauty or national parks, well, then that's taxpayer funded for the cleaning of them, in which case, no, you can't be there. And obviously you can't be on the roads or the pavements or in cities or in towns or in villages. So no, you would then be segregated to your own little spot, of which you still have to pay tax on. So you can't exist unless you're earning below the minimum. But again, that's not a moral argument anymore. So seeing as they are now actually restricting you to home, it gets worse. But what examples are there that you're allowed out? Shopping for basic necessities. What are necessities? What about seeds? Who's to say? What about if something is broken in your home? You've now got a hole in the first floor bathroom because the plumbing is broken and you want to be able to fix that. Can you then get the PVC tubing? Is that a necessity? Well, it is for you. If now you can't use your toilet and there's a hole in your floor, then you also will need the carpentry to fix that. But is that a necessity? Exercise, including with members of the same household, or with one other person from one other household, as long as you still keep your distance, in which case, why does it matter if you're keeping your distance? Why does it matter how many other people you meet? Surely you just have a bigger and bigger circle, or if you will, then a line and then a triangle and then a square and so on, or you can circle it out and out as you wish. Travelling to and from necessary work, and you are encouraged to work now, providing care to someone who is vulnerable, being the Good Samaritan. And of course, with those 750,000 volunteers, they're now getting rather pissed off with what they're asked to do, seeing as they're not the heroes or the pillars of the community that they thought they would be, because there's not enough work for them because the coronavirus isn't such a big problem. So that's nice. Or fleeing harm, such as domestic abuse. That won't be overused. How are the rules and advice different across the UK? England is the most relaxed, but also the most stringent on fines. But put simply, it's that simple. Can police stop travel from one part of the UK to the other? No, but as soon as you cross the border, then you can be stopped because the other countries don't want you to travel. But what advice have police received? They've been told to follow the 4 E's. Enforce, engage, exterminate, and okay, enter, enforce, exterminate. Let's go with that, and engage. Somewhere along there. But no, it's not that bad. We have engage with people, asking them why they are out. You got a license? Explain the law, and if necessary, set out the reason why they need to be inside, stressing the risks to public health. If confronted with facts, explain that they are arguing, and are therefore resisting arrest. Encourage them to go home if they have no reasonable excuse. GTFO. Enforce only as a last resort. Only close that 6-foot gap, which you're telling other people to have, if they're not. Yeah. So, stay away from someone if they're not a risk, but do get really close to somebody if you are concerned that they are spreading the virus. What brilliant advice. Almost as if it isn't thought through. Not at all. But you are allowed to sunbathe in England. So lastly, economics. And most people go, well, economics, don't care, not affecting me. Unfortunately, because the UK government seems to be behind everything that the UK does, it does. And in particular, that they wish to underwrite insurance. So, as I say, the economy shrank by 2% in the first 3 months of 2020, even though, of course, in March, it was just a few days of impact, as they say. So they expect a bigger slump in the current quarter. Well, of course, Sunak said it is now very likely that the UK economy will face a significant recession this year, and we're already in the middle of that as we speak. Yes, of course. So, a recession leading into a depression if it lasts long enough, of course, and it probably will be, unless they're trying to inflate the GDP artificially, but let's be honest, it isn't the first time that they've done that, but that ended badly last time, so if they are trying to do that, they're just going to try and get themselves out of the hole, call an election, then let it fail, and then hopefully spend the next few years trying to get it back up again in order to get elected again. It's not really for the good of the country, it's mainly just, how can I stay in power to keep earning my money? So radical intervention, and of course we know from Hoover's example after the Great Depression, of which point it was recovering just fine, and then the intervention happened and it got substantially worse, that government intervention doesn't help, it only makes things worse. So, while analysts expected a larger quarterly decline of 2.6% in the first 3 months of the year, it still represents the biggest contraction since the end of 2008, when the world's major economies sank into recession, as we see here in this handy-dandy graph. So they say that the crisis in 2008 was by lending to people that you shouldn't be lending to, basically because the government underwrote it and said that, yeah, you can, because if they don't pay, then we'll pay for you. But let's not talk about government intervention causing a recession again. Oh no. So the lockdown measures announced by Mr. Sunak mark a more radical intervention in the economy, with the state paying the wages of vast swathes of the workforce and guaranteeing loans to businesses. With what money? Trying to sell government bonds, which are already going at a loss, and that they're only being able to sell them because they dictate that banks actually have to buy government bonds in order to exist, because of course they're underwritten, in which case they're paying for themselves in a way. No, that's not sustainable at all, in which case they're going to go for so-called quantitative easing, which is money printer goes brr. So anyone's savings, of course, are basically obliterated, but we knew that already because, of course, if you had money saved, then you wouldn't be getting the bailout money. But if you didn't have savings, then you would. So again, the idea of all of this, because it boosts the GDP, is to not have anything saved, not have anything for a rainy day, and not be prepared for when things go to shit. That is what they want, because then they get to maximise the growth as soon as possible, trying to suggest that boom and the bust are natural, and of course, can't be stopped, when we all know that they certainly can be. So, as they go on to say, the ONS said a rise in spending on food, alcohol and new TVs only partially offset the decline. You don't say. On Wednesday, the government stepped in to underwrite trade credit insurance to ensure the insurance market can continue to function, which is what set off the 2008 crisis, pretty much, by underwriting them. Because, of course, then, if you're an insurance company and it's underwritten, then you don't care who you lend to because it's not your money anymore, so you can lend to anyone. You can insure anyone, if you will. And it doesn't matter what happens, you're not paying for it. Therefore, your idea of risks and the like, they go out the window, because who cares? Who cares if it can't be paid back? It's not up to you, is it? No. So, the idea of centralised command has been obliterated so thoroughly over the decades that why the hell are Conservatives doing it now? Trying to suggest that they understand the insurance for everyone, everywhere, on everything. They don't. And normally they would openly admit that. But then to say, yeah, we're going to underwrite it, says that, oh, well, anybody who needs that insurance can definitely get it, and there shouldn't be a worry about the possible cost that it could have for people who have it and just abuse the system. That wouldn't be a problem. So according to recent data from Morgan Stanley, insurers worldwide would have to pay up to $46 billion or £38 billion in trade credit insurance claims due to coronavirus lockdown. Well, if they were covered and they weren't ready for this, then of course they will go under. Insurers had warned the government that they might not be able to survive if they have to pay out huge claims due to struggling British businesses failing to pay their bills. Well, that is something that happens when you take out insurance. If the terms of the agreement did not cover such a thing, then of course don't pay out. If they did, then you do pay out. It's a simple agreement. If it includes being shut down even from government intervention, then you pay out. If it says we will not pay out if it's shut down due to government intervention, then don't pay out. Very simple stuff. If you made a mistake, own it. Don't try and put it onto somebody else. And now more personal stories, so fantastic. But France and Italy saw much bigger contractions of 5.8% and 4.7% respectively in the first quarter, where lockdowns were imposed up to 2 weeks earlier. That's something to look forward to. Analysts expect a double-digit drop in UK gross domestic product in the coming quarter. Yes, and up to a third by the end of the year. Bank of England has warned the UK economy is likely to suffer its sharpest recession on record this year, even if the lockdown is completely lifted by the end of September, and the recession will turn into a depression. I can almost guarantee it, but they're hoping that it's going to be so sharp that we can pick back up, therefore it won't be a depression, because it sounds much worse saying a depression instead of a recession. The banks of the economy could shrink by 14% in 2020. It expects the downturn to be short and sharp, with growth of 15% predicted in 2021. Good luck, because everything is going to be more expensive, because money won't be worth nearly what it was before. So that ain't going to happen. If you step back, allow people to get themselves back together, then sure, much more likely. And if you allow it to happen now, then you won't have a second wave of the virus, because it won't have had enough time to mutate. If people are keeping healthy, that means going outside and exercising, and eating well, of course, and not having such a food shortage that we're seeing now, where Wendy's in America can't sell their burgers, and the UN predicts 130 million dying from starvation, then people would actually be able to get through it fine. And then, of course, it wouldn't have time to mutate to something more deadly, in which case there would not be a second wave, because we would all be immune to it by then. And I've noticed that the WHO have gone very quiet about having it means that you're not immune to it. And the talk about vaccines also seems to have fallen by the wayside quite a little bit, as people are getting a bit fed up, and maybe Bill Gates' plan has failed, at least this time around, and the experiment has gone, no, actually, people don't take kindly to being oppressed by their governments, and especially not in America, where at least they have the Second Amendment. So, global impact, of course everyone's affected, trying to get China to pay for it. Good luck. Then, of course, the idea is to put in tariffs because they're exporting more. Again, as Tumbles so rightly pointed out, that when you go down this route, that if they're nuclear armed, I know you have mutually assured destruction, but would a president or presentator like Xi Jinping prefer to be remembered as the one that screwed China and failed China, or would they rather not be remembered at all because they've ended the world? And when it comes to somebody as unpredictable as that, you don't know. So, on that lovely note, until next time, as always, have a good one.